Welcome back to Comic Book Nation's Quick Save, our gaming focus segment. I'm here. I'm your host, Kofi Outlaw, and with me is my Comic Book Nation co-host, Matthew Aguilar. And today we are proud to be representing Quick Save as we get into a big TV show that also crosses over into the world of gaming. Perfect thing here for Comic Book Nation, where we cover all things geek culture. So we are here to talk about the season 2 premiere of Halo, the Paramount Plus live action TV series based on the Halo video games. If you guys are regular fans of Comic Book Nation, then you know all too well that we jumped in with both feet to Halo season 1, which was a turbulent ride, right, Matt?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, just to say the least. Just to say the least. So after kind of getting through all that, because I think we at the show were some of the people who were the most understanding of what this show had gone through, what it was trying to do, what it managed to get in the can, and all the COVID to the behind the scenes creative turmoil to everything. So we were kind of more lenient to say, okay, we see where the seams are here, but we also see good things that we think that sometimes maybe the more hardcore game fans might be missing out on allowing a TV show to cook with, and there were elements of that. So after standing on that business, and by the way, being Comic Book Nation being a subsidiary and employee of Paramount, let's just get that out in full disclosure in the beginning. But we are here to give you guys our honest opinion. We have a lot of stakes going into Halo Season 2 because we said this show could be something that, given enough of a chance, it would come back strong with better production, a clearer storyline, and all the things we needed, all the kinks we needed worked out. And now we're here. Halo Season 2 is here. So Matt, here we go. Here on these recap shows on Quick Save, we will be breaking down each episode of Halo. And for some of them, we will be inviting some special guests from the show to join us and talk about what you just saw in these episodes, including one big guest that we had to lead off with. Matt, who do we have at the end of this recap show joining us? Oh, man.
We got Master Cheif himself, Pablo Schreiber. Very excited for that.
So if you're looking for how these Halo recap episodes are going to go, Matt and I are just going to break down the episode beforehand, and then we will feature our talk with one of the cast or crew of the show. So strap in, have fun. If you're just coming off watching the episode, take a deep breath, because we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, this is a recap show. We will be talking spoilers because that is what we are here for by nature. But just in case it needs to be said up front, spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about the season 2 premiere of Halo. Now, me and Matt are burdened with the knowledge of having gotten the first 4 episodes of the show. So our trick here is to basically just keep this to what we know about episode 1. So we're going to be checking each other as we go through this, because while we obviously will be talking about spoilers for episode 1, it's not going to be, we can't be talking about spoilers or things we know coming down the pike. So really fine balancing act. Here we go. Matt, how'd you feel about the season 2 premiere of Halo season 2? It is called Sanctuary. And this one, I was just doing an article about this, but this one was really just done by the new show, was written by new showrunner Dan Weissman. And I feel like this episode has quite a bit to prove out of the gate, just to let viewers know, hey, we're going to be cooking a little bit on a different kind of grill in season 2. But what did you think?
Oh, man, I thought this was a hell of a way to start season 2. I think we're going to get into spoilers, obviously. So, I mean, this thing leads off with a gorgeous battle sequence, I thought. Just showing, it's when we're talking to people about it, it's like just Master Cheif doing what Master Cheif does. And I think there's a spotlight here in this sequence that, man, that knocked it out of the park. I mean, if you wanted close quarters, kind of in your face action, there's like, the pew pews and all that, but like really this gets a lot more confrontational in its combat, at least in this particular sequence. And I thought they knocked that out of the park. And then, you know, all the stuff we've talked about, as Kofi alluded to from season 1, like we've been big proponents. There's always been that helmet, no helmet, too much, you know, why are we seeing the face of Cheif, all that discourse. And, you know, we were very much of the side that like, hey, I need more than just a cool character design. I need to know who the hell this person is. And I think we get a lot of shades of that as well in this first episode. And then also building the world out, and Silver Team and what's going on with Soren and all this other stuff that's happening. But I think at its core, this first episode addresses, hey, we're going to give you close quarters action, Halo action, and then we're also going to give you the character development stuff, especially like towards the end, with Cheif and things that like season 1 did so well, that got overshadowed by something. So I don't know. I dug it, man. I was hyped. I didn't know what to think going into this.
Yeah, I have my stats pulled up here. I didn't have them before. New showrunner and executive producer David Weiner is the person who wrote this first premiere episode, and it was directed by Debs Patterson, who directed both this episode and will direct next week's episode 2, and has done some good TV direction in her work. I think I wrote about how, okay, here's a couple takeaways I got like right from this opening sequence. First of all, there has clearly been a kind of upgrade and focus on the Spartan Silver Team and their kind of camaraderie. And I don't think it's a spoiler to say that in season 2, that becomes like the clear centerpiece of what the main characters are, right? It's Spartan Team and all of them. It's not just, you know, Kay and John, and then, oh, these other guys we kind of see sometimes, whereas it's all of them together and their banter, relationships with each other. It is a fundamental difference because it forms an actual emotional core to the show with the characters that fans care about the most, right? Which are the Spartans. And Master Cheif obviously is the lead Spartan, but it's hard for him to interact. And there is even somewhere in these early episodes, there isn't even an allusion to this, where the character, it becomes a part of the character focus in his arc to say, yeah, this dude has trouble connecting with people. He has trouble fitting in with everybody else. He is this isolated, even though he's looked at as a hero, really and personally, he's just alone. And like, what does that mean? And so in the face of like higher powers, and there's initially we see right from the bat, like some of the threads that get put into the season about, you know, there's the lady from the cult asking Master Cheif, you know, you don't believe in gods, do you? That's not for you, is it? And he's kind of like, and so like everything that, you know, we know from the games about like the Halo and the religious aspects of that and the spiritual aspects of that, like, are so heavy in the game, and they're already making it feel more relevant to this character in a way we understand. And that's the other thing, was the writing is there's so much clearer purpose to this season already. Like, it's already like, okay, I get it. We get a premise that is just in this first episode, simple enough to follow. The Covenant's out there doing secret stuff. They're amassing something. We don't know what it is. Nobody believes our main character. Our main character's like, this isn't, you know, getting that rebellious spirit going, and is going to have to kind of have it from both sides, you know, his own team up his back and trying to stop this disaster happening before it happens. That's such an easy thing to follow. It's a mystery. It invites us back every week. It's like, okay, we could do reveals, we can do twists, we can do all this stuff. And like on the surface, it's just Spartans going out to do Spartan things and investigate, fly around, look at stuff, investigate, fight. Like, these are things we can build episodes around. So yeah, already I thought like, okay, like I get what's going on. It's not like when in season 1, I remember us being like, okay, you know, this was weird, but interesting, but let's see where it goes. Like, you know, this one's like, okay, we get these beats. They're familiar beats, and like, we know where we're headed, and it's compelling. So even when we slow down and kind of after this initial action sequence, and we have to do a lot, because I know that at least, and I will say it front, these first episodes do have to do some cleanup from like all the stuff in season 1 to take it, be like, we haven't forgotten about this, but we're streamlining it this season into something else. And yeah, even in those parts, I thought it did a good job. Like Soren and some of the stuff I could nod off on in season one was in the back half of season one, rather, was more interesting and already set up to be more interesting here.
Yeah. No, and you mentioned, Silver Team. I cannot say how much we if you go back and listen to our reactions from season one, we talked about Kai like stealing the show constantly because it was like, oh my God, like she's such a breath of fresh air and stuff, and how she challenges Cheif and also everything else and stuff. And here, like, you would have been pardoned though to not know the rest of the Silver Team's names in season one. Like, I wouldn't have blamed you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like you can go and find them, but like they didn't make as much of an impact as they really should. And just in one episode, I mean, Vanek's already, that whole conversation, it's like within 10 minutes, I think, that whole conversation of like, oh, so when did you do it? Oh, okay. And he starts talking like 3 weeks ago. And that is all the way through to me, through the season so far, they've continued that. And so I just think like that immediately makes such an impact. Riz is the same way. Like, you're already starting to get personality from this character. And so I just, that is so necessary when you have someone that's more stoic by nature. You need those other personalities for them to bounce off of. Especially with the fact that Cortana's not in the picture really in the episode. So you need that, so I thought that was right off the gate, like one of the most immediate impacts.
Yeah, I think this has made the case, at least for me, that we got to stop the mental, unless brainwashing is a direct metaphor, like we need to stop the mentally suppressed mental control trope in any of these genre projects, because I think it kills it every time. Like you said, it's like, what do we do with a character who can't be dynamic? It's like, that's just like watching paint dry. And like you just said, in the first opening sequence of this, when the Spartans are getting ready for battle, there's more interesting dynamic between Kay and who is that? Is that Riz, or I forget?
Vanek.
Riz,
Yeah.
Vanek,
Yeah.
and Riz is the other girl. Yeah, is the injured girl. Vanek in her, and like, yeah, just that thing. And during the battle, where he says he's been watching like nature shows, and he says something about like a thing, like a type of animal that can do this, that, or the other, and they're like, what? Like, that's already a much more fun show than anything we got with them just tromping around in season one, and the drama of, are they child soldiers and all this stuff, which is just, I mean, wasn't bad as a compelling question about the Spartans, but like it didn't leave us with characters that were dynamic. It was a lot of them just sitting around staring at things, hoping for blips of emotion in season one. It's like, here, now we're chips out. I don't know how to finish that without getting dirty, but we're just chips out, and it's time to like get down and like, yeah, like you said, they're now a real squad in a unit. And it's not a spoiler to say that dynamic, we know, the two of us know, is solidified as a centerpiece for the season. And it also gives you stakes now. Master Cheif can lose things, even though we know we got to keep Master Cheif. Master Cheif can lose people, can lose things that really will affect us and will affect the show. And that's a bigger, like a much more important thing too, because you have to have stakes within the show. Like in season one, if anybody got killed, we wouldn't have cared. And by that finale, it would have been like, it was just such a joke. It looked like, but in that finale of season one, if we had somebody like really significantly killed off, like it would have been an NPC on a like cut.
Or if it was someone, it would have felt for shock value only. It wouldn't have felt earned. And people would be complaining about like, oh, they got the short shrift. Why didn't they get brought back? It's for sure.
All right, but let's talk about some of because we've already kind of gushed about the Spartans and that battle sequence. Oh, I also said they're also working smarter, which I say about the action sequences, because I know people are going to talk about, and we've alluded to some of the action, but this is still like, it's still the same kind of challenge. There's still Spartan sequences where they're just CGI characters. The elites and the Covenant are CGI characters. But what they did, like in this first episode, is we have a planet where fog, active camouflage, all these things that can be seen cynically as tricks for, oh, this is much easier to render in. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they did it in a way that created an environment and a circumstance where what was a hurdle became kind of a nice asset. That fog, the kind of horror movie nature of
It's
it
like
with the
Silent
other
Hill.
Marines. Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
and people are getting yanked out and murked out in the fog, and you're just like, oh, and even though you know Master Cheif is going to survive, again, you're worried about those other Marines. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, these people don't necessarily got to make it, and can he save them? And what happens to him if he can't save them, or like the stakes? And so that sequence is so much better using, you know, all those visual tricks to get around just having to render full 3D characters. But that's how you work smarter. And there are other sequences throughout the season with having the Covenant operate in the shadows, quite literally, you know, that do make for just, it makes the Covenant more menacing. It makes those sequences more horror-like and scary. It makes each fight sequence, whether it's just a bunch of random Marines or the Spartans, it makes you feel like there's stakes and like, ooh, I want people to make it and stuff like that.
There's a in season 1, they talk about the Covenant a lot. They talk about how deadly they are. They talk about how much of a threat. In season 2, in just these early episodes, they make you feel like they are, and they pick their spots to do it. This episode alone is bookended by a gorgeous shot, and you've seen parts of it in the trailer, but you know, the energy sword shot of all those lighting up in the fog is just fantastic, because it just shows you the scope of like the threat that you're facing, even on a relatively small scale. And then the end, which is the Armada shift, like that, they've done such a good job of making them feel powerful, as opposed to just constantly telling you, no, we got to worry about him. And that, like, at some point that starts to lose. When they do talk about him here, it feeds into a plot regarding Cheif and Ackerson, which we'll get into because he's also a huge part of the show. Titans alum Joseph Morgan shoots a lot of scenery in this show. But yeah, I think it's they pick their spots, but they actually make you feel the threat as opposed to just exposition all the time, and it's great so far. Oh, you're muted, buddy.
Oh, sorry, man. Real professional. Having them, it also takes the horror movie thing of them being the other, this thing. Like, if we ever get to like a Halo 2.0 where we're getting more Covenant perspective and things like that, that's going to be something we got to earn, right?
Right.
Season 1 made the mistake, the grave mistake, I feel like, of throwing an entire half of the show behind Covenant lines, and like in doing so, we saw the Covenant elders. And we saw, what's her name, little girl that I don't like to think about. The key.
It's actually Maki, isn't it? Maki. Yeah, I forget the name. I watched. We even get hints of that storyline and stuff, and I still can't remember the name. I'm always flipping on the name, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but like, Maki, yeah. Charlie Murphy. I should remember that name. Charlie Murphy. Yeah, Charlie Murphy's McKee, and then having her be like this focal point for the Covenant, we ironically never got like, I felt like in season 1 we never really knew the Covenant as anything. It was just like weird looking aliens having weird conversations about weird stuff and about sacred objects that we don't understand and no new viewer understands. And so we didn't even spend that much time with the elites or the brutes or anything, except on those battle sequences when they're just fodder, right? Like for Master Cheif and them. Already now these elites and McKee, like, in all this stuff, and we get this little hint of possibly there being like a McKee or a McKee-like figure in that fog sequence at the end that Master Cheif sees. Like, they already feel like a lurking threat that could pop up anywhere and do, like you said, real damage, because Master Cheif goes through it. It's not like it's easy. It's not like a invincible hero. He has to pull real battle tactics, and that's what I loved about this sequence was it was real battle stuff. Like, he had to fight for real, like real combat, hand-to-hand combat, using armor, of course, and shields and all that Halo stuff we love. But like, actually had to do that. And like, there's a great sequence when an elite jumps on him and is trying to stab him, and he shoots him at first, but the shield is there, so he has to get like real close with the pistol and like blow like through the shield and his head, like at close range and stuff like that. It's just the details are here too. That's the other thing we should say. Like, from the stunt work to the production design to the sequencing and staging, this feels like Halo game sequences, as if, and even better than some, because as you said, like, This sequence feels like if Halo had a great Silent Hill sequence in it, where you had to walk through a fog with elites jumping out at you. Like, I would play that part in a game. That'd be dope. Like, it'd be so much fun. But yeah, they kind of really nail it back. But before we get out of here, I just want to take some time and just kind of focus on the slower parts, because I know we're geeking out over here about this big battle sequence, and I'm sure people will be talking about that. But again, I liked that we have to deal with season 1, but they find a way to do it in a way that is compelling. Like, one of the most uneven things was Bokeem Woodbine, who I love as an actor. Right now, I think I was thinking about it. Like, we got to put some respect on that man's name as a character actor for the level of stuff he's done. And I know what you're thinking of. You're thinking of The Last Hit or whatever that crazy.
No. The Big Hit, he is amazing in, but I did not immediately go there. However, he is fantastic in that movie.
But like, yeah, Soren's story, because early on in season 1, Soren had like that big bottle episode with him and Quan and like that whole fight, and he was pretty badass, but it was like so uneven by the end, like how he fit in with Master Cheif and all that stuff. Already you just get a simple kind of story here, and some twists with Soren early on that are just already more exciting, and it's all kind of related to something with Halsey, and these things are going to come together eventually, and it's just, that's already more compelling. They're already kind of gathering these elements together and linking them in ways, whereas the first season felt like so spread out, and this was there, and trying to keep track of all of them and relate them to each other was a lot harder. So I thought they did a good job. And like you said, we meet Ackerman in this episode, who is Brother Blood from Titans, as you said, Joseph Morgan. But already kind of, I like, because Halsey, I guess, is obviously a much more complex character, not just arch, not just evil, but this guy can be a little bit more of just a smarmy kind of guy we don't like, right? And it's easy to ally against. And his conversations with, the Spartans and things like that, he's just as deadly with conversation as they are with guns and his scheming. And so that already is a good, interesting element. And, it's Joseph Morgan. He just got done being Brother Blood. There's got to be some kind of turn coming down the pike, so we just got to keep an eye out for that.
I know he teased it as, you'll hate me at first, and then you'll grow to love me. And I'm like, boy, it's going to take some, I'm going to see. I'm very interested to see how that arc plays out. Or no, I think he said, you'll understand me. And I went, okay. But like, he's already making the hate thing. He's already knocking that out of the park, but it's just, he's a great actor. He could just sit there and like ponder things, and he does it in such a pretentious, smarmy way. You're just like, oh my god! Like, especially his conversations with Chief are like living that out on screen, right? Like, oh my god, how do you not punch him? Like, how do you not hit this man?
And again, like, I love the camera work and the direction in this, because they do the same thing from like, I know people will get heated about this, but Batman vs Superman and that Lex Henry Cavill scene. Like, I understood the casting of Lex Luthor in that movie simply from that scene, because it's like this little smart guy, like just yapping off in Superman's face, and Superman having like every reason to just like level his face off his face, and then being like, I can't do that. And the restraint of that. And that character knowing that he can't do it, and in
a twist to that, though, this character, unlike Lex, has, he was like, he was in the military, like he fought, he was on the battlefield, so like he has there's like a degree of respect there already with Chief when he comes in, like, you're one of us. And yet now you're in this spot. And so like the way they play with that as well, and he plays with that to manipulate people to a degree, like that's really interesting. That's a thing that, like, it's weird. Like, I don't feel like Chief and other people don't even know really how to feel about him, because he's kind of coming at it from all angles a little bit.
Yeah. He's always kind of reprimanding, but he's also kind of like, oh, but he comes in that scene is great because, like, right, the details. He's like, oh, I know him. Oh, and you're back on your feet. And yay, it's you. And I know. And he actually knows who they are. They're not like grunts or just assets to him. But you don't know if he knows it because he actually genuinely cares about them, or he knows that that's a tactic to get people ingratiated to you is to treat them and call them by name and know those details. So again, he keeps you guessing, and that's what you want. And I think, yeah, I'm trying to think pound for pound, like all the people we tend to have to focus on this season are people who are just, good actors, compelling characters. And I don't think there's like, unlike season one, I didn't feel like there was as much drag, even when we go to other places and focus on like the Soren side of the universe, like
Agreed.
where we find those characters. And now knowing, and some people who have more exposure this season, like Fiona Fiona O'Shaughnessy as Lara, as Soren's wife, who has
a lot of spotlight there, which is great.
Exactly, and good in a good, compelling, again, a compelling character. You don't know quite where she's going to go or like what she's going to do or how she's going to land on things. She's far less passive in this already than much more.
And Kessler has a role to play too, right? Like it's son. Like it's really,
they're not background characters,
right? Exactly. If you're gonna move us into a section and devote time to trying to get us to care about a certain situation, then you need to give the people in those scenes some material and some things to really chew on and convey that. And I think they're moving in that right direction with those parts. I think some people will come in and still think they're a little slower than other aspects of the show, and they'd be right. I found them very interesting though. Like I was still immersed, and I really care about that stuff. And especially with how things end in the episode, I thought they teed that up really nicely. Like you need to care about this side because it's going to factor in down the line.
Yeah, and they quickly even make, but I mean, they give Soren and Gruer just like little. It's not quite an action sequence, but like they put some budget to it and put some spectacle behind it, and then there's a twist, like you said. And so, yeah, already you come out of this episode, which I will say, there's a lot of weird endings to each of these episodes. Sometimes I'm always kind of like, sometimes I'm like, because where they stop, it's kind of always. But it feels like they're kind of telling like one big movie storyline, and they just kind of stop at each place. But yeah, I think overall, would you say, if you can even remember what Halo Season 1's premiere was about, would you say this was a better season premiere?
From what I vaguely remember of my reaction to it, I'm pretty sure I was. Pretty sure it's been a while, but like.
Yeah, okay, I'll recap it for you. It's Quan's family and her dad getting wiped out before they get saved by the Spartans.
That's right.
And then we kind of then there's a whole bunch of like Halsey doing a bunch of stuff, and like and then Keyes and John get taken back to the base.
Okay. I remember the whole Quan part now. Okay.
Crazy.
So and I remember
run away, yeah.
Okay. So I think I remember liking that premiere quite a bit at the time, and especially for what it had to set up and things like that. But I will say, I think this works as I could tell someone like, just start here, and I would feel comfortable with them like getting this is the tone, this is the feel. Like I think if you like this episode, you'll like the series. I don't know if I could have done that with the first one. I don't think I would have recommended. I would still pick people. I would still like, you need to kind of, your likes and dislikes need to line up with this for me to feel like you'll gravitate to it. This episode, I could show to a bunch of people and be like, if you dig it, I think you will. This is a better hopping on point for me. And it gets across the things I loved about season 1 in 1 hour. So I think it's better. And without even considering the action scene, I just think all the stuff in between and after are really good. And then the action scene like puts it over the top,
Yeah. I was looking back at it. Yeah. I've forgotten how much season 1 was a mess of narrative. It like how many times it changes focus. It doesn't even start Master Cheif. It starts with this random person, Quan, we don't know. There's all these flashbacks in every episode to like John as a kid and him and Soren as kids, and like all that stuff. And it was just like, yeah, that was way too much. This is a much more kind of focused episode with conflict, characters, characterization, arcs, and just the basics. and just nailing down the basics. That'll do it for our recap segment of the Halo Season 2 premiere, but we're not done yet. We sit down with Halo star Pablo Schreiber to talk about the episode as well. Matthew Aguilar stepped out and handled that interview for us, so check that out.
Matthew Aguilar here with ComicBook Nation, and we are here for a very special episode of Quick Save, and we're talking all things Halo. So who better than to have Master Cheif himself, Pablo Schreiber, with us? How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing great, doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Pleasure is mine.
So we got a lot to there's a lot to process in episode 1. I feel like number 1, we just got things kicked off in a rather epic way. It is called Sanctuary. Obviously there is a huge battle that, you know, we've been teasing, but I feel like we did it justice with the teases. What was that like, setting the tone for that scene itself, that fight sequence? Because I feel like we really got an idea of, it didn't feel like a video game. It felt like a video game brought to life in a way. What do you feel?
Yeah, no, it was really important, you know, to start the season off with a bang. Really important to see Cheif in his element. Really important to see him doing what he does best. Important to see why he has the reputation he has, and really start the season, you know, giving fans that massive moment that they've wanted for a while. And it was an opportunity to also create a new vocabulary around how the action was going to be told for this season. You know, I think one of the big changes from first to second season is the tone of the show. It's a little darker. It's more gritty. It's more subjective in terms of the point of view, and especially when we're in battle sequences, we want you to feel like you're in the battle with the soldiers. We want you to feel like it's immediate and dangerous, and you're right there. And so that was an opportunity to start the season off in that way, by establishing that new camera vocabulary and art department vocabulary, where there's always mist and fog and you can't quite see what's just beyond the next corner. You know, the new showrunner, David Weiner, was adamant that he wanted to tell make an 8-episode war movie, basically. And, you know, this was kind of the best way to kick that off. So thanks for noticing.
Well, and I mean, there is definitely the war aspect comes through there. And also because of how devastating the attack is as well. And you see the people affected by it as well as your team. So I think it kind of, you know, there was a lot of bases covered there, because you're getting this kind of big macro picture, but also a very small personal picture.
Yeah, you really get a sense of what the stakes are, you know, from the human perspective, from the soldier's perspective, and from the side of humanity in general. You know, they're losing planets at an incredibly accelerated rate. The Covenant is getting closer and closer to their stronghold of Reach. They're trying to keep them distracted in the outer reaches of the universe, but things are not going well, and they're getting too close for comfort.
Well, and that was something interesting too that the episode does throughout, is that, you know, it sets the stage for this big fight, and you're like, okay, like that's amazing, and then like Silver Team doesn't necessarily come home to like a hero's welcome. It's said that, you know, there's another team obviously that is kind of a bit annoyed with Silver Team and them getting all the accolades, but like it doesn't feel like it's this big homecoming for them, because it feels like there's a bunch of people that don't feel like this threat exists, that this, you know, this things that Cheif is warning them to are like, no, it's all in your head. You know, it's not, it's like played for, that's not real. And there's starts to be a thing throughout the episode of like, okay, did that happen? is that something, which is amazing when it's so many people were around to see it, you know, and I just enjoyed that they kind of played with that aspect. What can you tease about, just number one, how it affects Cheif here in this particular episode, but then also how it affects him throughout the season?
Yeah, well, a couple things. One, you know, we kick it off right away at the beginning of the season with the scene of Silver Team up on the ledge, and they're griping about, you know, their current assignment, and you get the sense right away that they're being underutilized, you know, and we don't quite know why or what that looks like. And when we get back home from Sanctuary, from the battle, we immediately meet James Ackerson, who's the new leader of he's Oni, he's leader of Oni, but he's taken on the Spartan team and replaced Halsey basically as the head of the Spartan program. And we right away are sort of we sense that he's using the Spartans in a different way, and we don't know why. And Cheif is going to have to in the first few episodes figure out what his intentions are and why he's using them in the way that he is. Kind of alongside that arc is the arc of people starting to mistrust Cheif, you know, and it's spurred on by Ackerson, who's very quite obviously suggesting that his judgment is not reliable anymore. And so you have this character arc of your lead being his sanity being questioned. And that's, you know, obviously a fun arc to play, and then even more fun to, you know, be validated by episode 4, when obviously the threat is quite real and at our doorstep, and off we go.
Well, and it's fun too. I mean, Morgan's so great in this role that I don't know. There's so many. It's hard to find a descriptor that works there. There's very much like a smarminess to the character, telling you things that aren't true, or at least that is to be believed. And you guys play off each other, you know, really well in those scenes. And there's not a pistol or a laser rifle in sight. Has that been fun to kind of flesh that part out? Because he's got a great line in the first episode of, you know, something actually that I feel like applies to the series too, and the fact that like everyone knows who Master Cheif is, but you know, does anyone really know John? And that's such a great encapsulation of the series, I think. What hasn't been fun working with him in those sequences this season and in this episode in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. The character is such a good foil for Cheif, in the sense that, you know, they are a real cat and mouse, you know, trying to figure out what the other one is trying to get at, and neither one stating exactly what their intentions are. And that's always fun when you have people trying to manipulate their will on the other person, but doing it silently and behind the scenes. So yeah, there's definitely a real smarminess to Joseph Morgan's performance in a perfect way as Ackerson, and he's a great addition to the show. Christina Rodlow also is a new cast member we have, who plays Perez. And she's equally as important in Cheif's journey, in the sense that in the second episode, he ends up at dinner at her house, and ends up at like sitting at the family table with them. And she brings up this whole line of thought for him after this experience on Sanctuary, where he's confronted by the leader of the people that are basically being asked to leave their home. She gets right in his face and she says, "Have you faith, Spartan? Have you family?" And, you know, he doesn't think about it much at the time, runs away and, you know, saves the world, or actually just saves Perez first. And then later he goes back in the second episode to check on her, because she's lied about something in her recap of the event, and he doesn't understand why. And she invites him up to dinner. He ends up sitting down with her entire family at dinner and watching this, you know, collection of people who love each other and who have faith, not just in each other, but through their religion as well. And he's confronted with an aspect of his humanity that he hasn't put any thought into. And that the reverberations of that dinner and of that question that he got from the mother will continue for him throughout the season.
Oh, that's great. Because, you know, it's been interesting to see how the different Spartans take on that journey. Obviously, Vennec started it this season. We learned that, you know, early on, that, you know, he's like, yeah, I just joined the club, you know, a couple of weeks ago or whatever. And he's still trying to figure out what that is. And Kai obviously is like all aboard that train. So it's interesting to see how John is still kind of trying to discover it for himself, but is also in a way kind of the representation of this kind of change in approach to life for them. Like he's the one to do it first, and they all kind of followed, even though it wasn't explicitly said. You know,
touched on something else that is one of my joys of the second season, true joys, which is to get to watch these amazing actors that I worked with on first season who play the other characters in the Silver Team. Kate Kennedy plays Kai, Natasha Kolzak plays Riz, and Bentley Kalu plays Vanek. And they worked so hard and so tirelessly through the first season for, not a lot of glory, right? They're basically behind under the helmets, and not a lot of personality given to each character. But one of the real joys for me as an actor and as a leader was getting to see these three actors take the reins of their roles and start to differentiate themselves from each other and start to have their own moments throughout the season. And they rose to the occasion with flying colors. They're all fantastic in their roles, and it was really a true pleasure for me to watch.
Yeah, it's been great. And one of the big things we'll get to towards the end of the first episode is that part of that journey for Cheif is trying to figure out who he is without Cortana, because that connection has been severed as of now. Ackerson even makes a point to highlight that, and it's been a big thing of the debate. But we get this kind of rare moment of vulnerability for John, and it's interesting because it's not a direct one-to-one meeting because it's obviously not Cortana, but I thought the way it was done was really interesting, and also just he's not completely aware of how he feels yet about that. But I thought it did a good job of kind of teeing that story up for the rest of the season. What did you think of that scene?
It's one of my favorite scenes of not just the season, but of the entire series so far.
Oh, wow.
It really encapsulates for me, this journey of John discovering his humanity. And one of the best ways to do that, right? The characters of John, of Master Cheif and Cortana are inseparable, right? She's always going to be a part of his journey and his storytelling. So how many interesting ways can you do that? In the video game, she's with you as your tour guide through the game. You're him and she's your leader, right? And that dynamic, although their relationship changes and shifts, that dynamic doesn't change. That's pretty steady. When you do it as a TV series, you have opportunities to go through such a journey with two different characters and so many different ways to do it. And so for me, I really love that we get to see, first of all, you had John in his resistance to Cortana through season one, right? The fact that he wasn't open to the idea, that it not scared him, but that he didn't feel like he needed her. There was some antagonism in the early days when she was there. They didn't gel at first. And by the end of the season, he had really come to terms and realized how amazing she was, how useful she was, and how now almost indispensable she was. And to then see him where he has had her taken away from him and begin to question what it meant to have somebody with him at all times, to have a partner, that could actually aid him in his work. And now begin to question also what it means now to not have her and what it means to be alone. That's a dynamic that you don't get to see, much of in the video games, and one that I think has great mileage out of it. And the first few episodes of the first season will be part of the journey of the first few episodes, will be his journey, back to Cortana.
Well, and there's so much going on too, because obviously you have Soren's story, you have things that are taking place outside of just Cheif and even just the war itself, right? There's all these other people are living life everywhere. And obviously Soren, that storyline will, Cheif has a history there. We saw that play out in season one, so that will be a big touching point moving forward. But then, it's for those who were like, okay, well, what's the big tee up for the next, where we go with the Covenant? It's like, boom, that I thought, okay, I gotta say the energy sword scene is gorgeous. The way the far, all that stuff, the way those all flare up. I will say the coming out of the clouds, the flare up on the that
isn't that like, beautiful? The fleet coming out of the clouds.
Yeah, that's a great
shot. Oh my god, yeah.
What does that set up for
you can't go wrong with an energy sword in the fog, with the battle with Sangheli and an energy sword in the fog. You really just can't go wrong.
No, you can't with either of those, really. What does that tee up for episode 2 and moving forward, that particular scene and the even bigger threat the Covenant pose now?
Well, that's exactly it. It's establishing that the threat is quite real, and we as an audience member know now that we've seen it, now that we've seen the fleet at the doorstep of Sanctuary right before they glass it. We know they're coming. We know they're as Chief will say in the next episode. It feels like they're training for something, and just what that is, we'll unfortunately learn in just a couple episodes.
Well, thank you so much for the time. All the best success on the season 2. It's fantastic so far. Really enjoying it, and can't wait for people to check it out. And you can check it out right now on Paramount Plus.
Thank you, Pablo Schreiber, so much for coming on to Comic Book Nation and helping us out with Quick Save. We are so grateful to Pablo and everybody else from the Halo Season 2 cast that will be showing up, doing interviews with us and helping us make these recap episodes extra special for you guys, the fans. If you are just now getting into Comic Book Nation, we are the show that does it all for geek culture. Every week we have multiple segments of our show that we release in both podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, and on the Comic Book Nation YouTube page. You can find Matt telling you what's big in comics every week on The Pull List. We did a Percy Jackson and the Olympians after show called Riptide Radio. You're now listening to Quick Save, our gaming focus segment, which will not only release these Halo recap episodes every week, but our regular gaming focus segment every Thursday. And if you want to chill with me, Matt, and the rest of the regular Comic Book Nation show hosts, our live show every Friday is the Master Show, from which we do all things geek culture, talk about all topics, and do a major review of film and TV every week. Don't miss any of it. Subscribe now. This is Quick Save. We will see you guys for Halo Episode 2 and other gaming news. See you guys out there. Peace.
It's his.